of the Department of Law at Queen Mary and also a law alumni myself. This is the second year of this series that I have the privilege of chairing, and that was conceived as a way for us to nurture our links with our law alumni and to keep us engaged with each other through discussion of interesting topics. We are delighted that alumni from all over the world have been able to participate, given that the alumni seminar series has, over the first 2 years of its existence, been run online. And the speakers thus far have been a combination of alumni and QM law faculty, and sometimes individuals who tick both of these boxes, like our speaker for today. The URL at the bottom of the PowerPoint that you can hopefully all see and that I will post later in the chat box has the links for the videos to the prior seminars, and the sign-up details for forthcoming alumni seminar series events will also go on this URL in due course. Now, turning to our seminar for today, I'm delighted to introduce Frances Rideout, who will be speaking about clinical legal education and the QMUL Legal Advice Centre, of which she is the director. She is also senior lecturer in the Department of Law and runs 2 undergraduate law modules, the practice of law in a clinical environment and street law. Frances graduated from QMUL with a law degree in the very year that the Legal Advice Centre was being set up, and she went on to qualify as a barrister. She practiced in the field of criminal law from 15 New Bridge Chambers, where she remains an associate tenant. She has appeared before the Crown Court, High Court, Court of Appeal, and Judicial Committee of the Privy Council. And thankfully for QMUL, she retained her links and did pro bono work with the Legal Advice Centre, later becoming the Deputy Director of the Centre and more recently, of course, its Director. In that capacity, she has made an immeasurable contribution to the success of the Legal Advice Centre. The Legal Advice Centre has been nominated for many awards over the years and has won an impressive number of them. See their website for details. And for those of you who have been in the Legal Advice Centre and the reception area, you'll see some of those awards on the wall as well. But for now, I shall just mention the most recent one, which was announced less than a week ago, and that is the 2022 McJanet Prize for Global Citizenship. The prize was launched over a decade ago to recognise exemplary university student civic engagement programs around the world, and the Legal Advice Centre competed with universities across the world for this award. Now, I'm sure I speak for many of my colleagues when I say how especially proud we are here at QMUL of the work of Fran, our students and volunteer lawyers, including former alumni, and the rest of the LAC team. Now, before passing over to Fran, can I just say a quick word about the format for today? Fran will be speaking for about 30 minutes, and this aspect of the seminar will be recorded. We then go to our question and answer session that is not recorded. Can I remind the audience to please keep their mics off during the presentation itself? Thank you very much. And Fran, please do start when you're ready.
Thank you so much, Mario, and thank you for inviting me to take part in this really important series. It's absolutely wonderful to be able to connect with alumni, and hopefully during the course of my presentation today, you'll see how valuable that collaboration and connection can be. So let me start, if I may, by sharing my screen, which hopefully you can all see now. So my name is Fran, as Mario said. I am absolutely addicted to the world of pro bono. So when I was at Queen Mary, we had a student society called the Student Pro Bono Group, which I'm pleased to say continues to this day. And that was the hook that got me in. So when I went into practice, I came back to the centre and was doing some pro bono work. And really, once I got the bug and it was in my stomach, I've ended up staying. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about pro bono, clinical legal education, and how that works at Queen Mary and how it actually intersects with the new route to qualifying as a solicitor, the solicitor's qualification exam that you might have heard called the SQE. Okay, so First of all, I want to start with what is pro bono. You've probably heard this phrase all the time. You know, it probably means for public good. But there's a nice definition that came about in 2020 when the Thomson Reuters Foundation undertook a global survey of different pro bono activities, which had been undertaken by different law firms. And when doing this, to measure them, they had to decide what did they count as pro bono work. So they defined pro bono as legal advice, assistance, representation, and research, as well as drafting agreements, policy documents, or legislative instruments, and supervising pro bono matters, attending legal clinics, representing pro bono clients, or conducting legal research. They went a little bit further and said that preparing and running training sessions, seminars, or webinars specifically to or for pro bono clients on legal topics also counted. And that included providing legal education lessons to students in under-resourced schools, which hopefully you'll see an example of as we keep talking. I'm sorry, I've broken all the rules of slides and put a lot of text on this slide, which is why I'm going through it quite slowly. The other really key point about work that is pro bono work is that it should be somehow linked to public interest, okay? So it should be where the clients are considered to be people of limited means or organisations that have a social, environmental, cultural or community focus. So you might hear practitioners say, you know, oh, I do loads of pro bono. My friends are always calling me up for advice on such and such. Well, the reality is that probably doesn't fit with that last category, where it's for the public good rather than necessarily different individuals. Okay. So with that in mind, I want to move to another phrase, which we often talk about that can be a little bit jargony, and that's called clinical legal education. Okay, so this is the idea of how do you take the theory of law that you learn in lectures, the sort of hard letter law, and how do you mix it with things that come from practice, like procedural rules, strategy, professional legal ethics. How do you intertwine those two things to get to practicing law? We're quite behind because in medicine, of course, they've been doing this for years, whereas clinical legal education, this idea of learning and doing at the same time, has only really been around in the UK system for about 30 years. And it had a sort of slow start building momentum in the last sort of decade, really. And it started very much from the movement in the USA before it came over to the UK. Just a point on this idea of mixing theory and practice. Hopefully during the course of what I say to you today, it becomes really clear that I don't think this is just about skills. You know, it's about so much more than that. Sure, skills are involved, especially research skills, because of course you can't ever know all the law, it changes, especially in my field of crime, you know, it changes all the time. There's always a new Criminal Justice Act. But how do you use your different skills to make sure that you can stay on top of the different law and theories? So clinical legal education for us at Queen Mary especially brings together 4 really key components. It's all about collaboration for us, and no one part works without the other. So we bring together the voluntary work of our students, the trust and care that our local community partners and clients place in us, our volunteer lawyers from the legal profession who will supervise or help supervise our students. And then it's really fundamental to have that reflection that also accompanies, you know, that's a key theme that runs through clinical legal education. I quite often say this phrase, you know, otherwise it's nothing more than a bit of cheap work experience. You know, you've got to have the reflection that brings the teaching and learning aspect. So the European Network for Clinical Legal Education has defined it in the following way. A legal teaching method based on experiential learning, so learning through experience, which fosters the growth of knowledge, personal skills and values, as well as promoting social justice at the same time. Different clinicians who do my role will usually fall at a slightly different point of the scale, okay, where you might have a bigger focus on student education or a bigger focus on community benefit. I like to think that I'm sort of bang in the middle. If asked by anyone who pays my salary, I'm probably more 51% towards the education of students, but I like to think I'm 50-50, you know, and it's really important to get this social justice message across to the students, and via getting that social justice message across, the students will then also learn the skills and improve their education. There's a famous quote that says, that's in a wonderful article by somebody called Donald Nicholson that I can share with afterwards with whoever's interested. And it says, you know, unless you put the community first, effectively the ranks of the privileged, the future lawyers, are getting rich off the back of the poor, you know. So there's some really interesting literature and scholarship around this. The European network also just noted that clinical legal education can be formal, non-formal, or informal education, and it also includes programs and projects that use practical orientated, student-centered, problem-based, and really key here is interactive learning methods. So it's not about me standing at the front of the classroom and telling, you know, as the fountain of all knowledge and disseminating all my knowledge to students. It's got to be student-centered, student-driven teaching and learning. So there's a pedagogy in there as well. Okay, so I want to talk you through a little bit of the advisory work and the public legal education work that we do, so that you can start to see how this is demonstrated. So advice work could be one-to-one advice to a client, and of course that could be representing somebody throughout the whole of their proceedings. They're sending letters on their behalf, going to courts or tribunals on their behalf, basically being their mouthpiece. Or it could be a first sort of preliminary piece of advice that's in a letter writing format. That advice could be to a company. Sorry, there we go. I've got the advice and representation point here as well. So just being aware of that difference. At the Queen Mary Legal Advice Centre, we have different clinics, some of which do advisory only, so a letter of legal advice enabling and empowering an individual to help themselves, and at other times we do representation. So there's a bit of a mix. The students, the other day, a student was making a speech at one of our events and even quoted me on this. I say it so much, but you know, we really do cherish the idea that people don't have legal issues, they've got life events. And what we mean by that is they don't come to us with a neatly packaged contract law problem, you know, they don't come with a crime issue, they actually come with something that's a big mess of quite a few different issues that can cross over different areas of law. So it's really important that our students see that law is messy and difficult, and not necessarily structured like they might have experienced in their more formal education. Public legal education is slightly different to this advisory work, and it is still a form of clinical legal education. So this is all about how do you make the public more aware of their rights and responsibilities. Okay, so this could be as simple as a poster. You know, it could be a government website, it could be a workshop, it could be all different ways of doing it, but it's effectively about how do you communicate and improve public legal literacy. The other thing that public legal education also strives to do is to say, okay, how do you help individuals spot that they've got a legal problem? Because they can't access a clinic, you know, whether that's a free clinic or paid legal advice, without knowing that they have a legal issue. So that also forms part of public legal education. The Solicitor General's Committee on Public Legal Education in 2018 gave us quite a helpful guide and definition. PLE, as we often shorten it to, covers a wide range of activities aimed at empowering participants and increasing their confidence and capability to deal with law-related issues. Within the field of public legal education, there's a more discrete field, which is street law, which is typically delivered by law students and is much more interactive in nature. So when I come on to talk about our workshops in schools and prisons, those are both an example of public legal education, but more specifically of street law. And I've just put the link there because we can share these slides with you at the end if that's something you'd like to look at. So in a moment where I found myself talking about all of these crossing over areas quite a lot, I decided to draw a diagram that hopefully you'll find helpful. You know, pro bono is a vast area. It's not just delivered by student law clinics. Clinical legal education is typically all about students because there's that legal education part of it. So there is a crossover. What we do is both pro bono and clinical legal education, but you can have them separate. And the reason I've put clinical legal education slightly separately there, so not fully crossing over with pro bono, is that actually there are some examples worldwide of paid for student law clinics where the clients will pay some kind of fee, usually less than market rate, to pay for those services. And there's some really interesting articles about how that can benefit student education. My personal view is, you know, I don't think we would ever do that at Queen Mary because the ethos of the university is so focused on public engagement and social justice, and of course where we are in Mile End. But it's an interesting part to read about if anyone's interested. Then you've got public legal education, which, you know, as I said, could be a poster from the government, you know, so that doesn't have to cross over with clinical legal education. And within that, street law. And I like to think that street law covers all of those three circles. It's all about the students, it's always free, and it is a type of public legal education. So let's move on to the Queen Mary Legal Advice Centre. We are physically based in the law departments on the ground floor. We try to be as accessible as we can to the public, so we're right on the street at Mile End. We are a free on-site law clinic. And we also do those community-based projects that I'll come on to. So you can just see here, I've popped a few photographs. These are our students outside of prison. It was lovely to be able to get back into the prisons this year. This is our new refreshed waiting area, that area where the students will work on their advice letters. And you can see our client appointment rooms just off to the side. And below are some posters for some of the different clinics that we run, and a little example appointment going on there. So let's talk about this one-to-one legal advice that we give. The majority of our work will be that first-tier advice-only letter writing clinics, where members of the public are assessed to be pro bono appropriate, usually based on their income and circumstances, come into the centre and have an appointment which is led by an undergraduate law student. That student is supervised by a member of the profession, a barrister or a solicitor, who will ultimately sign off their letter of advice as being accurate. We've had about 4,000 clients come through the centre doors since we opened in 2006. And at the moment, we're up to running about 400 of these types of appointments per academic year, so from October to May. Clients receive their letter of advice within 14 days of their appointment, and all of the supervision is done by volunteer barristers and solicitors. So although there's 2 of us with practice certificates in the Legal Advice Centre, it's not actually our job. We step in where needed, but it's not actually our job to supervise. So here's just an example of some of the different clinics that we do this work on. So you can see there's quite a big range: consumer contract, crime, family, immigration. Some of our clinics relate to the type of client rather than the area of law. So Pink Law, for example, is all about helping the LGBTQ plus community with family law and immigration law matters, where the legal issue relates to their membership of that community. We've got the Black Justice Project that's all about civil actions against the police and employment discrimination and Windrush claims for the Black community. Choice is a clinic where we help people who are applying for deputyships on lasting powers of attorney. And we've got a project you can see there called SPITE, and that is an acronym for sharing and publishing images to embarrass, that's all about image-based sexual abuse that you might have heard called revenge porn. So supporting victims on family law, criminal law, and private law matters that might have come up there. So the reason I've put our social welfare benefits clinic at the bottom in highlight is because that's the representation work that we do. So there's 3 stages to that clinic, and it really is the absolute creme de la creme clinic, the one that the students will want. So the first stage will be clients who are applying for disability-related welfare benefits. They can come in and a student will sit with them and complete their form. And we send that off to the DWP to try and get their benefits. If that's rejected, which sadly, unfortunately, there is an incredibly high ratio of them being rejected, there's an automatic right to appeal to mandatory reconsideration. That's what we call it. And we also have students who can sit with the clients and draft those letters and send them off on their behalf. Very few appeals get allowed at the mandatory reconsideration stage. So quite a lot end up progressing to a tribunal stage. And our students will go to the tribunal, whether that's a virtual hearing or an in-person hearing, and represent the client. And they will, in advance of that hearing, have submitted written submissions for the judge. And we've also got various community partners who might do the first 2 stages, but don't do the tribunal representation. So we get clients that come into us at stage 3 or even stage 2, actually, of that process. So that's a really interesting clinic. Our community projects, first of all, we run something that we absolutely love that we've been doing since 2015 called Spike for Schools. We thought, why are we just advising clients once private sexual images have been shared? Why aren't we doing more preventative work in the community? So teams of 3 undergraduate law students design and deliver bespoke workshops and take them into local secondary schools. And they'll always talk to the school about their needs, what their student cohort is like, and then run sessions with them on rights and responsibilities so that we can raise awareness. We've got a lovely project called the I Am You project, where students work with the same cohort of 9 and 10-year-olds, so year 5 students. They'll go in and run 4 consecutive workshops with these students, all about the protected characteristics in the Equality Act. Now, of course, 9 and 10-year-olds don't want to hear about an act. So it's all done through play and paint and parachutes and all kinds of fun, where they talk about identity, different types of jobs, and boys' jobs versus girls' jobs, and trying to break stereotypes. So it's a pretty cool project. I think last year they gave the boys more sweets than the girls in an activity to try and illustrate unequal pay. So it's a good fun. And we've got a lovely project called the Prisoner Property Project, where our students, again, work in groups, go into prisons and talk to prisoners about a very specific issue, because we're not going to send our students in to talk about crime, because the prisoners might know more than the students. So we picked quite a narrow issue, and that is property that gets lost in the system. So let's take, for example, a prisoner that gets moved around different prisons, but their property doesn't follow them. Or perhaps the police have retained their property after an investigation and it really should have been returned. Then they'll help to talk to them about how they can try and retrieve that property. And what's quite interesting about that, it's a really long day, but the students run the workshops in the morning, and then in the afternoon, they will do client appointments, so individual client appointments, as if they were doing the letter writing clinic at the centre. And then they'll write the letters of advice when they get back from the prison and send them in within 3 weeks to the prisoners. So if there's a bit more of a tricky issue that perhaps a prisoner can't help themselves to resolve, then the students will provide specific advice on that. Recently, we've started to branch out into policy clinics. And in fact, quite recently, as in maybe 2 weeks ago, we did some written submissions to the Public Bill Committee about the online safety bill. So trying to use some of our data from SPITE, the clinic that we have for image-based sexual abuse victims, and looking at the bill and thinking, okay, what are our recommendations from the viewpoint of our victims? And we were working with the law firm Mishcon Derea on that. So it was brilliant that we were able to do a kind of really concrete contribution. We've previously fed into the Law Commission consultation on intimate image abuse. And our students have also fed into reports with another organisation called the Freedom Law Clinic, all about civil liberty and lockdowns. So we basically see what's coming up. For example, there was something about the guidance around coercive and controlling behaviour that I think they were seeking consultation on. Had that fallen in term time, the deadline was last week, we would have had a student team working on that to try and feed in. And to try and engage more first year students in the clinic, we also have a legal blog that you can find on our website and have a look at. And that, of course, is another public legal education tool. And we try to make some of our blog posts relate to some of our clinics. So if clients are on looking about how they book appointment, they might also see an interesting article that they want to have a read of. So I'll hit you with a couple of statistics. I've already said over 4,000 clients. Over 6,500 school students have participated in some kind of workshop with us since we started doing street law work in 2015. And we have over the course of the year on all of our different clinics and projects, about 400 students. I think it was a bit more than that actually this year. I think it's about 420. About 200 volunteer lawyers engage with the centre each year, and we have 8 members of staff. So we're a pretty big centre compared to some universities. We do a mix of extracurricular engagement and engagement where students can gain credit for their degree. So we give them that choice. And this year, our students have won £250,000 worth of disability related benefits for clients. And I think we still have 2 cases outstanding that we know we've won, but we don't know the amount of money. So hopefully that figure will go up. And of course, I mustn't forget the blue badge that they also won. So that's a really nice result for the students to see. So let's talk about the value of student law clinics. Obviously, it's incredible to support our local community. We are based in Mile End. Queen Mary's whole ethos is about public engagement. The university got the platinum watermark, the only university in the country to get it this year. And we very much hold that at the forefront of what we do at the centre. There's something around being place-based education, so why you should use where you are educating people to help improve that education. Of course, this area is inevitably skills development. I tell the students it's not about them developing skills, but of course I accept that is a happy side consequence. And there's all the obvious ones, drafting, interview skills, but it's the less obvious that are the far more interesting ones, having broad shoulders, resilience, working out what to do when everything goes wrong. Those types of things are the skills that I think are the most important that the Legal Advice Centre teaches. Employability, it improves job prospects. Students get more familiar with lawyers, how they work, they interact with them more. And ultimately, having lots of volunteers also leads to placements and connections with the legal profession. So, for example, the students doing the online safety bill policy clinic were invited to Mishkondareya when they had an event on the online safety bill, and Margaret Hodge was one of the speakers there. That's a fantastic connection to be able to have. We, as a department, want to develop graduates who are more likely to do pro bono in their career. How do we give them the bug in the bottom of their tummy? We want them to engage in corporate social responsibility, in ESG matters, and have that sense of social justice. And the centre really tries to pride itself on this idea of co-ownership of education. So a student will run a case or be preparing for a workshop, and they are leading on that. The staff are always in, our office doors are always open, we're constantly staffed. They get the support and the help with that, but they are front and centre owning their own education. And I'm a big believer that clinical legal education is a huge diversity tool. So we're not in an era where having an uncle or a family friend in law that gets you a work placement somewhere gives you a leg up. Any student at Queen Mary can make an application, well, within the law department, sorry, I should say, can make an application to be part of our centre. The truth is most of them get on. Everyone gets on if they do a half decent application. I don't tell them that. And so it's a real levelling up tool. How do you give everybody these opportunities? So I wanted to look a little bit to the future. We have just released our 5-year strategy, 22 to 27, which is available on our website. So please feel free to download that. And we're also looking about how we can get more resource. So really for us, that means more space and more staff, so we can run more projects with more students. You know, I often think, and I make no secret of the fact that it's my desire that one day we can make the Queen Mary Legal Advice Centre and engagement with it a compulsory part of every law degree that we have at the centre. You know, there's still a cohort of students that go through that don't choose to engage with us in some way. How can we make this our sort of stamp that we do? There's a big piece around embedding research more in our work. You know, the Legal Advice Centre has tons of data, and we don't always, in the sort of rush to get through clinic life and deal with everyday problems, we don't always get time to stop and reflect on what we could do with that data. So that's something that I want to have a look at. New ways of working. Sorry, that's that weird acronym on my slide. We need to think about what was good about pre-pandemic world and what was good about online world, and how can we blend the two to have the best possible centre. So, you know, all our students are actually back working in the clinic on all of their advice work, and have actually found the peer-to-peer learning to be really beneficial. We didn't get nearly as much kickback as we thought perhaps we might get when we said that this year. However, a lovely consequence of the pandemic has been that clients that might have opted for a telephone appointment pre-pandemic now feel much more confident using Microsoft Teams. So, you know, we're able to perhaps help somebody who lives up north somewhere, or in an advice desert, I don't know, maybe in the east of England or something like that. So there are some bits that we do need to maintain and build on. I wanted to give you a slight flavour of the national picture. So which other universities are doing similar initiatives, and where is Queen Mary in that spectrum? LawWorks are a national charity that support all kinds of pro bono clinics, not just student clinics, but they did issue a report about student law clinics. And again, I've put the link there if you want to have a look at it. And they basically found that most universities were now engaging in some kind of pro bono. That differed in how it was being dealt with, whether it was through a student society, a law clinic, or a collaboration perhaps with an external law centre or an external charity. But there's significantly more pro bono in 2020 than there was when they did their first report in 2000. And the Clinical Legal Education Organisation is a national charity, really for people who do my job and students to all come together to support each other and to share best practice. So again, they've got a great website that talks about how the events are run and the support that they can give to student law clinics. So I'm going to move on to the final bit, which is SQE. So some of you might be quite familiar with SQE. Others of you might be feeling that you're a little bit out of depth. I just wanted to start by saying, you know, what is involved. So this is the new route to qualify as a solicitor that's going to change things massively on the legal landscape. There are 4 parts to SQE. There's 2 assessments, SQE1, which is all about knowledge of law, and SQE2, that's much more about the skills side of things. SQE1, I know, is multiple choice, which has caused a bit of controversy. The third thing that students need to satisfy is having suitable character and suitability. And then finally, they need to gain 2 years of what we call qualifying work experience, or QE. Okay. And another point I should mention is that they need to have a degree to be able to do SQE. So it's not necessarily a law degree, just any degree will do. So the idea behind SQE was to open up the profession, to stop there being such high postgraduate courses for the professional level of qualifying. But what we're seeing is quite a lot of SQE preparation courses coming out that are really just the same as, you know, an LPC might have been at, you know, not at a similar cost. But it does provide some interesting opportunities and challenges for student law clinics. This idea of qualifying work experience can be gained through a number of different ways: paralegaling, helping at a police station, anything that involves giving legal advice or assistance can count. And that includes student law clinics. I'm not quite sure they'd realised this when they drafted all the guidance. I think we were kind of a bit of an afterthought. The clinic community went, hello, what about us? And what's interesting is that you're not confirming as a student law clinic that a student has got to a certain standard, or a prospective solicitor has got to a certain standard. You're just saying they've had the opportunity to engage in legal advice or assistance. So what's the advantages of this? It highlights the work of student law clinics. All of a sudden, perhaps students that weren't looking to engage with the legal advice centre might go, oh, I can get some QE here. That's interesting. Let me engage. I've just said there that clinicians like myself aren't signing off on competency. It's about opportunity. So in that sense, they're not really sort of beating us with a stick. At the beginning, this worried me a lot. I thought, oh my goodness, how on earth are we going to regulate this? How are we going to ensure standards? But I've kind of changed my mindset a little bit. I don't think the Solicitors Regulation Authority want to catch people out. I think they just are simply being more lax in terms of that quality. And of course, it could be an opportunity for clinics to get more funding, more resources, if there's then more student opportunities. So the disadvantages, this one actually I haven't put on the slide, but let's think back to the olden days where you'd have unpaid training contracts, or article clerks as they were there. We've progressed as a society to moving to paid salaried training contracts. One of the things that we're starting to see spring up is different organizations saying, oh, hey students, sign up for our whatever it is scheme, pay us X amount of money, and we will give you the relevant experience that will qualify as qualifying work experience. So it's a bit of a kind of murky underworld that's coming up there that I feel deeply uncomfortable about. So you're starting to get into that idea of not getting proper salaries. And that links really with the whole idea of commodifying clinical legal education. What we do in clinic is fantastic, and it's fantastic for its own sake, not for the sake that it gets you a little tick in the box that might get you qualified. And I also really worry that it gives less value to some types of clinics than others. So this idea of legal advice or assistance, our advice clinics will almost certainly tick that box. There's a lot of debate within the street law community about whether street law activities of going into schools and prisons will qualify as qualifying work experience or not. My gut feeling is they probably just cross the line, but you could argue it either way. And I think it slightly depends on the design of the project. But policy law clinics are of huge value to students. Think of the sort of social justice ethos that students can get from that. And they're highly unlikely to count as qualifying work experience. So will we find that students are choosing to be involved with the types of experiences just because it gives that QE? And then, of course, the administrative burden. One of my summer tasks is to work out how on earth we're going to sort of deal with this in the legal advice centre, because it has to be a solicitor, of course, that signs off QE. For some reason, it can be a solicitor who's not got a practice certificate, but it can't be a barrister with a practice certificate. So I've got to work out some kind of a system so that, it is more work for clinicians who already will have a full diary, and then something, like today, for example, a prospective client popped in and that was 2 hours of my day just gone. There's various things like that crop up. So it is quite difficult for clinicians to deal with. And I've already made this point that, pro bono is so much more than skills training. There's that ethics inside. So look, I've put on here the details. By all means, log on to our website. The easier way is probably just to type QMLAC into Google and we spring up first. We've got Facebook, LinkedIn, as of last week, Instagram and Twitter. So again, follow us on social media. We'd love to stay connected to our alumni community. And of course, email either our shared LAC inbox or my personal email address that I've put up there if you want to get involved in the centre in any way, you know, we're always keen to hear from anyone who's interested to get involved. So I was going to open the floor in a moment to questions and discussions, and I just thought I'd put 3 questions out to you as the audience, just to see if that got everybody thinking a little bit. You know, what ideas might you have for the Queen Mary Legal Advice Centre to develop? What would you like to see us doing? And do you think, on that spectrum that I spoke about earlier, do you think our clinic should focus more on the students' education, or do you think it should be more about community need and fulfilling that public need? And, you know, how do you think our clinic can increase the engagement that we have with our alumni community? You know, I'm really keen to make some positive changes in this way. We have plenty of alumni that come back as supervisors, but there's always room for more, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on that, particularly if you're joining us today as alumni on the call. So yeah, I guess over to you. If we have it, I'll stop sharing my screen actually, and then